I really truly want to learn the balance method acupuncture. Clara, do you have any course on this? And I did not. But now I do because my friend and colleague, Dr. Sonia Tan, has agreed to provide everyone that can't travel and meet her and come and learn from her directly a course that's now online on AcuPro Academy. So today, I asked Dr. Tan to come in and first of all explain to us exactly what is the balance system and how do we use it in clinical practice. Plus, we went into talking a little bit about the I Ching, which is the book of change. And if you don't know the I Ching, this is when you're going to learn a lot more. So there's a lot packed in this show. You absolutely going to have a blast because I always do every time Sonia comes on the show. And that's the second time she's here. So let's go. It's a beautiful fall day in Vancouver, Canada right now. And I have, for the first time on the AcuPro show, a guest that's here for the second time. Yay! I'm excited. Dr. Sonia Tan, who's a dear friend of mine, we've known each other for a long time, is here on the AcuPro show as a guest again. Now, if you've missed her first episode, it'll be linked in the show note before. It's episode number 6, and she talks about astrology, specifically Chinese astrology. So that's another episode. But today, I invited Dr. Tan back in because we're going to talk about something that everyone on social media ask me about all the time, which is the balance method. And Sonia knows this very, very well because she teaches it. So today I'm going to do a quick introduction to let you know who Sonia is. She is a doctor of TCM. She's also teaches astrology, feng shui. She's in all metaphysics stuff, which I love as well. Face reading, those things that we really all enjoy so much. But today specifically, we're going to talk about the balance method because we have been connected through Dr. Richard Tan years ago because you, Sonia, brought Dr. Tan to Vancouver to come when he was still alive to teach the balance method. And this is how I discovered it at the time. So first of all, welcome back to the show, Miss Sonia Tan.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. I know we always have a good time. I mean, our friendship goes way back as well. So I know it's always a good time.
Way back.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been practicing since 2006, and I feel like we've met in 2008, maybe.
Yeah.
Like really
Soon after. Yeah.
soon after.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you were in your first clinic. So I remember that. But today, I want you to explain to people that are not quite sure how does the balance method work and where does it come from? Give us a little bit of history and how it ended up in Dr. Tan balance method. Give us a bit of a history behind it.
Okay. So a little bit of the history, and it's something I touch on every time I teach it. When I teach it the first time, when they get the first level, the foundations, because the history is very important. So I'm going to go a little further back in history where we look at Chinese medicine has a 2,000, 3,000 year history. And so with that, there was developments over time, but also there was different schools and different styles. And then you fast forward into the 1960s, and the government in China at that time decided to unify or homogenize and create one way of us to practice Chinese medicine. Well, specifically acupuncture was really changed. So then it became TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. And so what they did is they asked the herbalists to really translate the books. That's why you see a lot of the Zongfu diagnosis of actions and indications in the book, whereas the books didn't originally have that. They had, indications of why it used, but the way that acupuncture was used historically prior to the 60s was channel theory. So some people may hear that out there, channel theory, or they might hear classical Chinese medicine. And that's all that body of work that's outside of that redevelopment in the 1960s to becoming what's called now as traditional Chinese medicine, TCM. So there is a distinction between TCM or Zongfu acupuncture and channel theory acupuncture. So balance method or balance system falls into channel theory acupuncture or classical Chinese medicine. So again, outside the 1960s. when you practice this, you are using the method that the way it was originally intended in terms of how they talked about it in that classic. So they talked about one concept specifically. It's called Li Gan Jian Ying. It's in the Huan Ni Jing, but it's specifically first occurred in this text called the Chi. It's one of the oldest Taoist textbooks, and it speaks about when you practice this medicine and metaphysics, you should have instant results. I'm just shortcutting the phrase in the book, which I have on my shelf. But with the longer version of the phrase, and yes, I speak about that in my own book here. The longer phrase talks about when you are practicing metaphysics and Chinese medicine correctly, you align heaven and earth. And that's like a beautiful statement in itself. You're aligning heaven and earth. You're creating the beauty of the balance of the world in the body. And when you stand a pole in the ground, you immediately see its shadow. That's natural law. So that's where it's speaking about instant result. So in effect, when you're using classical medicine and channel theory, you should be getting quick, instant results. So that concept got a bit lost in TCM Zongfu acupuncture because it didn't look at channels. It looked at, well, what's a missing action indication? Because herbalists at the time were more revered. So then we fast forward to, well, if you think about the history of migration in China, everyone would know that people migrated out of China. And so you would go into places like Taiwan, Vietnam, Japan, and in Japan, they always talk about meridian therapy. They're following what the channels go. Their techniques are different. So there's where we get into the history of classical Chinese medicine in Taiwan, because a lot of the three people that really developed balance method or balance system to where it is Richard Tan, their Grandmaster Richard Tan. I always have to give credit to Dr. Chao Chen, and he is the one that first discovered how the I Ching is connected to acupuncture. He found that in the classics and he wrote about it first and first published his book in the 70s. When you start to learn balance acupuncture, you'll see how the I Ching and the energetics of the guas and I Ching are connected to acupuncture and how you can even connect that at advanced levels into creating that energy in the channels. So Chao Chen was the first one that discovered that. He's a Taiwanese descent. And then I think many people know Master Dong's work, who is a Taiwanese practitioner. And a lot of Master Dong's work can be explained, or they use a lot of holography and micro imaging or holography. It comes from the classics also. And Wei Qiyong, who is a student of Master Dong, published a lot of articles where he found holography written about in the classics. There's an infusion of all three of those works. And of course, Dr. Richard Tan, he knew about that because he was born and raised in Taiwan and had Chinese medicine practice in his family as well. And he is credited for really putting together these systems and making it an easy way for us to understand in a logical, systematic fashion instead of, taking all these classes, it's getting all muddled, but he was brilliant in creating a really nice systematic way. And then he created pre-designed strategies in it. So that's what I talk about in level 2 and beyond. That we bring us to today, and he really, with his charisma and his evolution of the way he developed teaching, spread it around the world and popularized it. And I was lucky enough to discover him, or maybe the universe aligned us in 2004. And because I had studied I Ching since a young age and in my early 20s, as soon as I saw him talk about how the I Ching is connected to acupuncture, I was already hooked. I said, "Oh, I need to follow this master." At the time, I also met Jeffrey Ewan, and I'm like, "Oh, I want to follow this master too." But the I Ching really called to me. And then 20 years later, here we are. I became one of his gold level students, which is certifying someone with a lot of practice. He had certain parameters. You needed 10 years. You needed to take all of his courses at least twice. He also tested you as well. And I also became one of his senior students that which is different than gold level. It's just a group of students that went through all this latest advanced levels of courses, and then we finished them all together, and we became a nice group of brother and sister energy. And they're good friends to this day. And I still chat with them, and a lot of them, like at least three of them, gave me full support of teaching this after he passed away. So I feel very blessed, and you can see some of them have written comments in the book as well. And that was really, it's just a labor of love to have that with their support and that collaboration.
I remember him as a short, funny, full of zest kind of man. He's a small person, but he was a small person with a big personality.
Yes, yes, and I think that's what really made him so attractive to people wanting to learn. He was always very, yeah, cheeky and charismatic, so he just poured it out in his classes.
And fair enough. So now you went on to write a book, which you did in French as well, which I'm always impressed because I speak French. So,
Yes.
but yeah, this is the book that you wrote for people that are watching on YouTube. Then they can see the book. For people that are listening to the podcast, we will have the link in the show notes below. But it is the foundation acupuncture of the balance method. Can you tell me first, how does your balance method differs? Did you refine it in a way? Obviously, you learned a lot from your knowledge of the I Ching, meeting Dr. Tan, your practice, and eventually it formed into this beautiful practice. Can you explain that how did that came about?
Yeah, okay. First of all, I'm very excited to say that a Spanish book is coming out soon of my book. Yes, very,
Woohoo!
very soon, so you can look for all of that. You know, something that spoke to me that Jeffrey Ewan said is he said, "Before you start teaching it, you should evolve it. You should make it your own." And that kind of encouragement really helped me because I was kind of already doing that with my own experience in clinical practice, my own lens on how I thought through things, but also gaps that I was seeing on how to think about it and apply it of the way he taught it. You know, everybody has a different mind. And that's why people resonate with different teachers. Then I had an academic teaching background. I also have an academic background. Well, how can I make this better so that people can retain it better, they can understand it better, and they can have more confidence? It's not like people didn't leave his conferences with confidence, but there was definitely people that he would confide in me. I'm like, why are some people not grasping it and really understanding it and then going with it? I gave him certain things that, of my opinion, I said, one of the things I think is a lot of content in a short amount of time. And I think that maybe some things are too fast, right? So that's when he started to spread it out over 4 days. I just figured out ways to say it differently, present it differently. I added 2 steps to specifically help people's outcomes better because he had a 3-step thing and I added 2 steps. And I really think that's really helped people have a proper feedback loop. There are certain strategies that I present that way he presented it was great, but it also became like, woo. So I would change the way it's presented and how you would memorize things so that people understand how those pairings or those groupings work together. And that's really why I've started to call it balance system acupuncture, balance acupuncture, because it really is a body of work, a body of systems working together. And it's really also a way for me to just identify it's just the way I've taught it. And the book came about because when I was teaching my first cohort in the mentorship program, I only had these little handouts and there was no really nice concise book where all the foundations were together. Even Dasha Tan, he didn't have a lot out there in terms of book, and even the books he had out there, people were saying there isn't a lot of content there for us to kind of understand. I decided to create basically a textbook for the first 2 levels of balance acupuncture so that people would have a reference of good notes. You know, the correct notes in terms of like, these are the clinical favorites, these are the patterns. You know, as a teacher, you can say things, but people may not write down exactly what you say because it has to go through their brain, it has to go through their filters, it has to go through their attention span. And does it actually land on the page exactly the way you've said it? At the end of the day, I wanted to improve people's outcomes. And that means trying to give them the correct or clear notes for them to go by. And so creating a textbook, it's more of a reference. It's not instructional. It doesn't say how we came about it because that's what you take the class for the context, but it's a reference to go back to say, did I take those notes down correctly?
You teach it in the way that makes it
Yeah.
simple for people to really understand and be able to apply. And so I love that because I know you're a great teacher because we used to teach at the same college together for so long. I like that you did that. So now, this course that you have been teaching for a long time, last year I said, hey, excuse me, but what about us?
Yeah.
What about my TCM Rockstars
Yeah.
community who've been wanting to learn this forever? And a lot of people, unfortunately, cannot travel, right? They don't have the means or they can't travel far to come to a live conference or a live teaching. So I wanted to be able to give everyone in the world the opportunity to learn the way you teach. Because if anybody has ever bought Dr. Tan, Sonia Tan, Scalp Acupuncture from AcuPro Academy, you know how great of a teacher she is because it's such a great, perfect course to introduce kind of like that holography balance
Mhm.
method kind of, course. And then now, because I've asked, you decided, sure, okay, let's do this. So now we actually have the opportunity to have you teaching your balance system on our platform for our TCM community, the AcuPro community. So first of all, thank you for doing this because I'm like, yay! Now everybody can kind of benefit from it. And what I wanted to ask you is, how is the course structured? And then once you explain this, for people that are not quite familiar exactly what is the balance system, can you explain that as well so people really understand how amazing and effective it is? And not just for pain, by the way.
Oh, yeah, definitely not just for pain. And I will say that this recording is the latest version of me teaching these foundational levels. The foundational levels are levels 1 and 2, and I'll get into what those 2 differences are. Even though there might be other webinar versions out there, which are like at least 5 years old, every time you teach, you know this, Clara, you're refining it, you're making it a little bit, you're changing something different. When you get the latest version, you get the latest refined version of it. And I think it just gets better over time, right? First of all, balance system is channel theory. You're looking at how channels flow. You don't need to think about Zongfu. You look at where a channel is blocked and you'll learn about what channels balance or heal the blocked or sick channel. There are 5 different strategies on how you can balance a sick channel. So in the very first level, you're learning about those 5 strategies to balance one sick channel. So that's what we call single balance. You're balancing one for one. One sick channel, how do I balance it? So the very first level is very focused on musculoskeletal pain or discomfort or range of motion or tightness, not just pain. So you need to learn how channels balance each other before we take you to functional medicine, which is level 2. Level 2 is functional medicine problems. In level 2, we learn how to be more efficient with many channels being sick or if there's a functional medicine problem. So that's why it goes way beyond pain. Pain is just the rock star area of what we can do with balance acupuncture because it's so quick, so effective, and you can really get those quick results. You can get quick results with functional. Obviously, sometimes you have to wait a bit, but at the same time, if people have bloating on the table, you can bring it down right away.
Well, let me ask you something because I think that's really good when you talk about the first level, which
Yeah,
is obviously more
yeah,
musculoskeletal, and then we go into internal medicine after. Let's say, just to kind of give people an idea of how you go about it,
yes,
I come in and I have frozen shoulders,
yes,
right? That's my big chief complaint.
yes.
How do you go about it using the balance system?
Okay, so we always have 5 steps. So first step is what are the block channels? So I go through the shoulder and say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 channels that are blocked. Okay. Then step 2 is what are the balancing channels? So level 1, you'll learn that for all 6 channels, there is at least 5 other balancing channels. Then the step 3 is I have to look at holography. So holography is looking at an image or a mirror, a representation of that body part in another body part. That's why the translation means an echo correspondent. It's like an echoing image of what you are looking at. So in Balance Level 1, we're going to learn all these different maps of different types of holography, different maps so we can look at the imaging maps. Then with the balancing channel, I said, okay, at the shoulder, what area of this balancing channel will treat the shoulder? Okay, so I'm looking at the balancing channel, like this is the head. I got to go right here on the balancing channel because that's the location or holography of the shoulder, according to classical Chinese medicine. Then I put the points into that balancing channel at the holography of the shoulder at the balancing channel. And step 4, this is the step extra one I added, is you have to chase the pain or discomfort until at least 50% reduced. Because when you have it at least 50% reduced, you have the proper feedback mechanism of Li Gan Jian Yin. That means the instant results are happening. If you don't have that, that means you've gone, it's a called user error. That means you misdiagnosed the sick channel, or you mischose the correct balancing channel, or you mislocated the correct holography location of the shoulder. So you go back and retry. But if you have the 50% reduction, then you can go to step 5. Step 5 is really just a reminder to say, let it flow for at least 30 minutes so that circulation of qi and blood can go through a good amount of time to flow through that cycle. So that's how we approach frozen shoulder. Now, frozen shoulder being 6 channels, that's quite a lot. I might move to a level 2 strategy where there's pre-designed layouts. Pre-designed layouts to know that you can be really efficient attacking an area or treating an area that has many channels thick.
Are you ready to unlock the remarkable potential of a microsystem that is so effective for pain disorders you cannot bypass it? This is what Scalp Acupuncture course taught by my friend and colleague Dr. Sonia Tan is all about. This is at your own pace, and it focuses on treating pain and tightness, including all the types of musculoskeletal pain and injury, chronic and acute, as well as burning pain, tingling, and numbness. This course contains what you need to know to start practicing scalp acupuncture immediately upon completion. Now, this course utilizes the balance method from Dr. Tan, which makes it such a very effective method. Listen to what people who invested in the scalp acupuncture course have said. I want to thank Dr. Sonia for doing an amazing job. By attending your course, I have learned the right technique to treat patients when it comes to balance method for acupuncture scalp. I have started to treat patients using the method and have received great feedbacks already. It has helped my patients' body discomfort feel better. It is very easy method to perform on patients. I really did enjoy learning about the system and would be interested in learning other systems. Best teacher I've ever had. Generous in her teaching and friendly, very enthusiastic, clear and articulate. Splendid, interesting, sharing knowledge in a fluid way. Very passionate teacher, animated. Sonia is alive. I love that. Definitely not a boring course, I can tell you that. You'll receive continuing education hours and a certificate after you pass a multiple choice quiz. You have access to the course forever, so you can watch it over and over at your own time because it's pre-recorded. You also have a 7-day money-back guarantee because I stand behind my product and I always make sure that the teachers that I bring on my platform are the quality of teachers that I so vet for you to benefit from. Don't miss out on the opportunity to revolutionize your practice using this very simple yet very effective method for pain disorders. Go to my website, AcuProAcademy.com, and click the TCM course tab on the menu bar, or check out the link in the show notes below and invest in the scalp acupuncture course today. You won't regret it. It's really important to start with level 1 and get to practice it so you feel comfortable, you feel confident, and you're starting to really apply it before you go into advanced. I love that because I think most grasshopper just want to know everything right away, and it's like Star Wars, it's like Yoda will tell you, it's like one step at a time, just learn as you go, and then you build kind of like foundation. Right? Otherwise, if you want to learn everything at once, it's not going to work. So I totally get that. So let's say the frozen shoulder, there's 6 channels, but you could see that the large intestine is the one that's really affected, right? What's the corresponding holography mirroring channel that you would go and apply?
So large intestine, the full name is Pan Yang Ming. System 1 in the classics is called Ming. Ming in Chinese actually means name. And it's named that way because the balancing channel is the channel of the same name. So that means I could use foot Yang Ming. It's channel of the same name to balance hand Yang Ming. Now all I need to do is I need to go to the correct holographic location of the shoulder. So where we're showing you maps of the leg and show exactly where the shoulder would be corresponding on the leg, and I would go there. Now, in the case of frozen shoulder being that large intestine is the worst, but the rest are sick, I might use a level 2 magic strategy that has stomach within it so that I know that I can do a lot of great work on the stomach channel to bring a balancing healing response back to Hen Yang Ming, large intestine. But I have other channels I can work with to also send a healing response to the other like secondary or tertiary channels that are blocked in the shoulder. Then I can be a little more efficient at not just doing one for one, because then the results will last longer. Because we're building a strong foundation, we're creating great circulation, we're including a lot of new ones that are involved.
What's interesting, because I think sometimes we forget, because we come out of school and we're so Zong Fu theory, and I got to do my Zong Fu pattern, and there's liver qi stagnation and spleen qi deficiency. But we forget that balance of channels. Like, I love to see the correspondence of the heart and kidney, because they're both Shaoyan meridian. And so one's on the hand and one is on the foot. And I love that, because if you look at the channel theory, or the opposite, kidney and heart, they're also water and fire. They're also, the mind and the root of the body. It doesn't matter. If you look, you could see the connection, right? And to me, that puts it all together, the channel, and then I can apply it knowing my classic TCM knowledge as well, the Zong Fu theory. So to me, it makes so much sense.
Yes. And as you get more into functional medicine, as we get into higher levels, I don't want to say Zong Fu theory, but it is kind of Zong Fu, because there are some overlaps. Like, for example, liver is still a wood channel. There's still going to be wood pathology in it, but you have to just know when you're looking at the channel and when you're just looking at Zong Fu and when they overlap. And then that's why those are for later levels. So start with the basics, then build your building from there.
Thank you for explaining all this, because I think that's important for people to kind of see how you put it all together. I know you use this a lot in your practice. Do you use the balance method exclusively, or you go out of it depending on what's going on, or you're just so loving its effects that that's what you do only?
I pretty much do this only. I do channel theory only, classical Chinese medicine only. The other classical channel theory methods I use are the 8 extra vessels and complementary vessels, the Luo's, divergence, and the 8 extras. At least the way that it's taught classically, not what's taught in schools. They don't teach it very well in school. That's really what I do, because it's so effective. So I don't really want to use something that's not as effective or slower. I want to use something that gives really good, quick, efficient results, because I want the best outcome for my patient.
You introduced me to Dr. Tan, then you introduced me to one of my favorite people, which is Dr. Yvonne Farrell.
Yes.
I absolutely love her, and she is, for me, what you talked about, what you use in your practice as well, which is the 8 extraordinary vessels, how to use them specifically for, emotional trauma and addiction and all the stuff that we've learned from her.
That's right.
I don't know why, but however, she's kind of like my idol. And I was like, when she agreed to come on the podcast, I was like, oh my God. And then, it's just crazy. So she's coming in November. I recorded it, but it's coming in November, and everybody can listen to it. She made me cry in the podcast. So it was really fun. It was a lot of fun. So thank you for introducing me to someone that I just learned so much from. And like you said, you gravitated so much towards the balance method, and it really spoke to you. For me, the 8 extra vessels really spoke to me as well. So I think our intention and what we gravitate towards is how we all form our own practice, because we all learn the basics, but then we're going to go and mold it like you molded yours into the best way possible that feels good for us. Right? So,
well, it's a reflection of you as a practitioner too, and then you'll be attracting people that resonate with you. I would say that was maybe one of the missing parts for Balance Acupuncture, is that it treats functional, it treats mental, emotional. It can treat, to a certain extent, historical trauma, but there is some limit as to where it went. And so when I discovered the 8 extras, the Luo's, the divergence with Dr. Farrell and with Jeffrey Ewan, I realized this was the last piece that I really felt I needed in my practice to address people that are stuck in processing certain parts of their life and life journey, right? The historical trauma, the psycho-spiritual aspects that couldn't be addressed very well with what we had in the Balance System Acupuncture, or even like some of the other classical medicine. So, and even I was speaking with a couple other senior students and who have also studied with Jeffrey Ewan, and they said, yeah, that's why they follow Jeffrey Ewan and they eat extras, because that's the missing piece, is that psycho-spiritual part. So I do encourage people to seek that out as well.
That's something I totally resonated with right away from the beginning and learned so much from her. So I appreciate that. For everybody that's listening, the course that Sonia has agreed to put on the AcuPro Academy community is linked below, so you can go check it out. And I promise you, if you invest in it, you will not regret it. First of all, because it's so well presented, because that's Sonia, obviously, and she's such a good teacher, but because it is a game changer for your practice. It is going to completely switch around the way you do things, and the outcome is so effective. You're absolutely going to love it. So now, I have a question for you, because I think a lot of people have heard of the I Ching, the Book of Change.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of have a little bit of understanding, but they've never read it, or they've never pursued looking into it. And I think a lot of my audience is not sure what the I Ching is about. So can you talk a little bit about this and how it relates to the balance method?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that could be a whole other podcast. Okay, the I Ching, Book of Changes. You can see in Claire's background these lines. Each of those lines is called a Yao line, stacked on each other. That what those lines represent is yin and yang. And what the ancients discovered in the world, they realized that there are boundaries, there are limits, and there are polarities that exist in the world, yin and yang. Those lines represent yin and yang. And with the way they understand it, how balance was created in the world, they could use this representation in this binary fashion with these yin-yang lines, creating these trigrams that represented energy or phenomenon in the world. And based on that, they discovered the basic first 8 aqua. And that represents heaven, earth, there's thunder, wind, mountain, lake, as an example. And then from there, when their true trigrams are paired together and make a hexagram, it creates another different phenomena or representation of phenomenon in the world. So the Book of Changes is 64 hexagrams that represent situations or phenomena of the world. When you read it, it's going through different phases of yin and yang and phenomenon energy, and it's assigned 5 phases. You can see the 5 phases were created based on the arrangement of the bakwa, of the 8 gua, and that's how the 5 phases came out. But it's a way for you to understand how to connect back to the universal energy and that universal knowing. The way that it is connected with acupuncture is because certain eras, 2,000 years ago, and then in the Song Dynasty, 1,000 years ago, they realized that the acupuncture channels had a resonance or connection to certain guas. So if you understand how to balance guas, with the laws of nature are that this gua can be balanced by this gua based on how it looks, basically how yin and yang are supposed to be attracted to each other. That is how acupuncture channels can be balanced by each other. So I guess that's probably the shortest version of how I can say how the I Ching, what it is. It's really a great philosophical book that you can read, besides Oracle, besides looking at phenomenon in the world, even phenomenon, if you know how to use it with acupuncture, that you may want to create in the body. Some things you would avoid because they're not very good energy. Other ones you would want to create because they're very good harmonious energy. You can actually read it from front to back, and you can understand the way of the Tao a lot better, and even understand Chinese medicine a lot better.
What's interesting is in the I Ching, when we were talking about the yin and the yang line, so let's say there's 3 yin, 3 yang,
Yeah.
And of course they could be, 4 yin and 2 yang, but it's always 6. What is interesting to me is that there's 12 channels, 6 hands, 6 foot, and there are 6 lines for each gua. So it's interesting because I could see that the number 3 and 6 is coming around a lot in Chinese medicine.
Yes.
And you could see that from way back when.
Yes.
And I love that because I found that if you look deeper, to me, it makes so much sense, because even when I was in school, this was interesting, but one of my teachers taught me that everything should be a denominator of 3. So it's like 30 minutes treatment or 27 minutes treatment. And it's like 3 needles or 6 or 9. And when you look at formulas, when you look at each herb in the formula, it's 3 grams, 6 grams, 12 grams.
Yeah.
You don't see something that's going to be 7 grams, right? So I love that. So do you have anything you want to add about this?
Oh, it's a magical number. 3, 6, and 9, they're magical numbers. It's also a whole course in itself. It's partly how it connects back to some of the classics with the I Ching. There's some Taoist connection back on how that is feng shui. There's connected. It's just the way I think the ancients discovered the world and the balance that's created in the world when you use those specific numbers. Each number has an energy or a 5-phase associated with it as well. So it's a magical number. Yeah, it was great.
It's magic. This is what become the magic word. I love it. Well, I really appreciate you coming in and explaining this to us so everybody can kind of really understand. Any last final thoughts that you want to share with everyone that could be interested in trying to look at their practice in a different way using the balance method?
I'd say that everybody's looking to improve their outcomes. And so here is an opportunity for you to improve your outcomes and possibly be a game changer. I've heard this a lot. I mean, it happened to me that people say it was a game changer in my clinical practice in terms of getting results. But also, one of my students said it helped them feel confident. As soon as the patient stopped talking, they knew exactly what to do. It helped take away the cloudiness of the diagnosis and provide clarity. I'm like, okay, I see. Now I know what to do. It provided more clarity and I create more confidence. And I will also say that when you're trying this goes for anything. If you're trying a new system or style out, it's really a good idea to just try that without mixing and matching other things. Otherwise, how are you going to know what's working? You just won't have that very clear scientific method to know. So if you're going to give this a shot, which I encourage you to do, just do this for at least 2 to 3 weeks minimum. Give it a whole month. Then you'll be able to see how it works and you'll get to know the method well. At the end of the day, we want to improve outcomes and help our patients. And I know that this will really help, so give it a shot.
Thank you. I could see your passion for it. And I think that's exactly it. It's like, just give it a try and stick to just that. That's actually a really good point. Instead of doing like, ear acupuncture with it, and zong fu with it, and then out of the balance method, you're like, okay, that's too much. Let's just do one thing and see what happens and goes from there. So I think that's such a great point. So thank you for coming back.
And happy to pass on knowledge too. So keep this beautiful medicine alive.
That is how you end the show. Keep this beautiful medicine alive. Mic drop. Done. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, AcuProAcademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case studies, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer, because the AcuPro Show podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.